Inside every wild animal, a quiet calculation never stops running. How fast is that thing approaching? From which direction? Is it looking right at me? The math happens quicker than any conscious thought, and the answer it spits out almost never changes. Put distance between yourself and the human. This response is not taught. It shows up in creatures that have never once laid eyes on a person. Under controlled conditions, repeated across dozens of wildlife studies, the fear of humans seems to be written somewhere deeper than memory. It is passed down. So when we free a trapped animal, slicing through the netting, hauling it out of the mud, prying open the snare, we like to believe it understands what we are doing for it. The evidence points somewhere else. Something is happening in those moments, but the scientists who have given their lives to studying it still cannot agree on what to call it. Start with what entrapment does to a living body. The instant a wild animal can no longer move, its biology tips into a state that has no honest comparison in human life. Cortisol floods through it. Adrenaline rises to a level that would kill the animal outright if it lingered more than a few minutes. The heart rate doubles, and then doubles again. One study published in the European Journal of Wildlife Research found that hoofed animals caught in fencing carried higher cortisol levels than animals that had been shot or hit by cars. Higher than a gunshot. The body is spending everything it has, firing every emergency system at once, doing exactly what its ancestors did in moments like this, since long before the species had a name, either waiting to die or fighting until the fight runs out. From the outside, this state has a recognizable face. The pupils blow wide open. The muscles go rigid, not the jittery tension of a nervous animal, but locked solid, the way a body locks when it has bet everything on one final outcome. The mouth may fall slightly open. The breathing turns fast and shallow. The people who rehabilitate wildlife describe it as the animal leaving, still inside its body, but no longer paying attention to anything except the thing that might kill it. So when a person walks toward a trapped animal, the animal does not see a rescuer. It sees an apex predator arriving at the single worst moment of its life. That is why the thrashing gets more violent the closer you come. The animal's alarm system reads your nearness as the closing act of a hunt. It pours its last reserves into the only answer its entire history has ever offered. And then, in some of these encounters, something turns. The animal goes still. Not the stillness of exhaustion, something more chosen than that. When it happens, you can see it. Field researchers and rehabilitators who have watched it describe the same precise shift. The locked, rigid body loosens by a fraction. The frantic struggling stops. And the animal turns, not away from the human, but toward them. It settles into that position, and it watches. In December of 2005, a crab fisherman came across a female humpback whale snarled in a tangle of rope lines, roughly 18 miles off the coast of San Francisco. The ropes had wound around her mouth, her flippers, and her tail. 12 crab traps, each one weighing about 90 pounds, dragged off her body and pulled her steadily downward. She was struggling without pause just to lift her blowhole above the water. A rescue team reached her within hours. 4 divers slipped into the water holding curved blades, fully aware that one reflexive flick of her tail could end any of their lives. The moment they entered the water, she stopped moving. For more than an hour, she held her place at the surface while the divers worked their way across her body. Several times she shifted, turning, stretching out a fin, changing her angle in ways that opened up the lines for the divers to reach. A creature 50 feet long and weighing 50 tons made the decision to stay perfectly still, while strangers carrying knives moved all over her. The explanation most researchers lean toward comes down to threat pattern recognition. A predator on the attack moves fast and aggressive, cutting the distance in a straight, committed line. That exact pattern of movement is what a trapped animal's alarm system has spent millions of years learning to detect. A human trying to help moves nothing like that. Slow, no sudden motion, touching the trap rather than the animal, making no sound that matches anything in the catalog of danger. The brain scans its entire library of threats and finds no match. With no familiar pattern to react against, the crisis response stalls. The animal waits. In Yellowstone, a team of researchers found a wolf caught in a leg hold trap. It lunged and snapped at everyone who came near, exactly what the biology would predict. Then one researcher stopped moving and locked eyes with the animal, refusing to look away. Eye contact between a predator and its prey carries a specific meaning in the language of mammals. A predator moving in for a kill does not usually hold steady eye contact. It watches the body, tracks the motion, runs its calculation. Unbroken eye contact with no aggression and no movement behind it sits outside the standard template of a hunting threat. Some researchers suspect it may register as something closer to social connection than predation. The wolf's alarm system, already hunting for a predator pattern to match, runs into something it was never designed to file away. After a few minutes, the wolf stopped lunging. It sat. It returned the eye contact. When the team started working on the trap, the wolf watched their hands move. When the mechanism finally released, it stood frozen for a moment, looked straight at the researcher, then turned and walked into the trees. Field researchers prefer to describe this as a suspension of the threat response, nothing heavier than that. The alarm system does not shut off. It simply loses the thing it was anchored to. The expected chain of predator behavior never arrived, and the crisis response has nothing left to grab onto. The harder question begins after the trap opened. When the final rope fell away from the humpback near the Farallon Islands, she swam in long, wide circles around the divers, then surfaced beside each one in turn, nudging them gently with the tip of her jaw, one by one, before drifting to the next. James Mosquito, one of the divers, told the San Francisco Chronicle it felt like gratitude. Scientists handle that word with great care. Humpbacks do interact with divers under certain conditions, and behavior that follows extreme physical stress is notoriously difficult to read cleanly. But humpback whales possess spindle neurons, the same specialized brain cells found in humans, great apes, and elephants, the ones tied to empathy and quick social judgment. For a long time, these cells were thought to belong only to primates. The whale carries the neurological hardware required for exactly the kind of processing that moment would demand. Whether she actually used it that afternoon off San Francisco is something the data simply cannot decide. Young elephants hauled out of mud pits in Kenya have been documented reaching out to touch the people who freed them, trunk to hand, trunk to arm, before walking off. That trunk contact matters. An elephant's trunk is its main sensory instrument. It holds more than 40,000 separate muscles and packs in a density of nerve endings on par with human fingertips. When an elephant deliberately extends its trunk to touch something, it is not a throwaway gesture, it is an inspection. Researchers in elephant rescues have noticed that the animals sometimes hold the contact for several seconds, the trunk resting against the rescuer's arm or hand, before pulling back. The touch is slow and looks intentional in a way that sets it apart from a reflexive bump. Elephants grieve their dead, recognize their own reflections, and carry social memories that stretch across decades. They have been seen returning to the bones of companions who died years earlier and touching them with their trunks, sometimes the bones of their own family. The mental machinery needed to tell the difference between a human who caused pain and one who ended it is not something elephants lack. Some researchers push the point further. They note that elephants in documented rescues have stayed near the humans who freed them far longer than any threat suspension theory can account for. The danger is over. The animal is free. There is no survival reason left to linger. And yet several documented cases show elephants standing beside their rescuers for minutes after release, not running, not grazing, simply there, before finally moving on. The honest answer to whether animals know when a human is trying to help them is that we truly do not know. What the data does show is that certain animals, whales, elephants, wolves, measurably put their threat response on hold when a calm human works around them without escalating the situation. What follows the rescue in some of them includes turning toward the rescuer, making deliberate contact, and behaving in ways that serve no clear purpose for survival. What the data cannot reach is the inside of those encounters. What it was like to be the wolf standing at the edge of the trees, watching the people who freed it walk back toward their truck. What the whale was doing as she moved from one diver to the next in that cold water. Whether any of it carried meaning for her, or whether we are the ones supplying the meaning because we are also animals, running our own pattern recognition. And the pattern we keep landing on is ourselves. There is a version of this question that science will eventually answer with more precision. The tools keep improving. Neuroimaging in whales and dolphins, long-term behavioral tracking across elephant populations, stricter documentation protocols in wildlife rescue. The data will pile up. Some of what feels uncertain today will sharpen into focus. But the researchers who study this most carefully keep the question open. The animals are not the ones who answer it.